Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you've watched any of my YouTube videos, I started off doing art journal pages 8x8, and then I did set of three mini little tiny books. And now I want to get back to a bigger art journal books because I'm enjoying that. I've got an inspiration one here, which you saw in my intro. I like the feel of this. There's no way I could possibly duplicate it, but it's just inspiring me that I want to use some tissue prints that I've done previously, and I want to play with depth and layers. So let's get going and have some fun. This book is about 5.5 by 8.5. It's watercolor pages. I picked this book because it is stiffer pages than a typical mixed media book, and therefore it shouldn't bubble up on the pages as much when I add wet paint and water. I'm using my wet paintbrush with clear water just to use as a guideline to where I want to tear away details from this printed tissue page. I don't want all of it, and I don't want to cut edges because I don't want the edges of the tissue to be very obvious. So in doing this technique, if you've seen my other videos, you know I do this all the time. And it's a good way of getting a rough, uneven, organic kind of tear along the tissue. So it's a little harder where there's a lot of ink, but I'll do my best and help it along if I have to. Again, you could use one of those water brushes that you fill with water and then you squeeze it, but why use that when this works just as well? So I've got a shape here which I really like the flow of that across this spread. You call it a spread when you've got the two pages left and right opened up as one image. So on this spread, I want to again duplicate the feel of that other abstract I showed you as my inspiration, but of course I'm using new prints that I've made, and I don't even know, right now I know I'm starting with these, but I have no idea at this point where it's going to take me. You just have to be along for the journey. I've got matte medium, and I do have two plastic sheet covers that came with two bigger art books, and they were from mixed media books, and they're great because if you put them in the back, they protect. As I go along close to the edge like this, none of that matte medium gets onto my table or onto the back of the book. It goes onto the backing that I've got behind there. So I've got a good coating, and I was going to place that down, but I thought, no, I was going to place it down and fold back, but it's just easier if I add matte medium to both pages and then glue it all down as one piece. I'll eventually cover the entire top of that left page as well, but for now I'm just doing what I know I need. And I'm lining up the bottom left of the page and the bottom of the page so that I have less to cut away later on with the tissue paper. And I'm using a flat, large paint spreader because that helps sort of press that tissue print into the fold of the center seam, and it keeps it firm and in place. And I'm giving it another little press just to be sure. And then I'm using the paint spreader to spread this around, but I also quite often just use a fat brush, and I dip it with more matte medium just to make sure I've got a good coating. The other thing I like about giving such a big coating of matte medium is I am giving a protective layer over this watercolor paper so that when I do further layers of paint, it won't absorb so much in the paper, but will sit on top of the matte medium. And that way paint can flow and be lifted easier. So I'm just using the ball of my finger to press down any areas that had folds in the tissue print. I've got some, it's a completely different print, and I'm going to glue part of that down. I'm trying to decide, and again, I'm not overthinking this. I quite like what I already have glued there, but I want to add some more because if you see my work and if you see on Instagram my abstracts, you know I do a lot of layers, and a lot of this busyness in the background may get covered up. So I'm not shy with adding lots in the underlayer, because this is what I call my underpainting, if you will, because at least it gives me something to start with. If you don't put things down, you've got nothing to cover up and reveal later. So my theory is, for my style, is I put a lot of layers and I decide if I want to reveal them or cover them up. I've got a little extra from where I tore it away, and I'm going to add that to the right just to give some balance on the spread. And none of these are facing the same way. They're all different. And I'm giving that a good blow dry. So now I've got, not only have I glued those down, but I've got a good coating over top of the paper. I'm going to use some painter tape to protect that seam, so that if I do a lot of wet paint, it hopefully won't bleed through that seam where the thread from the stitching is of the book. That's a good place for paint to bleed through. So I've got a fairly large rounded paintbrush now, and I'm going to add some blue. This is semi-transparent golden high flow acrylic semi-transparent blue. Choose whatever colors you like, but these are the colors I use, and I always put the colors and my supplies in the comments below. So all you have to do is click below and look for it, and I give not only the colors and supplies I use, but I also give links to other videos that I've done that are a good reference to help you along in this process. I pressed down fairly firmly with dry paper towel, and you can see it's lifted paint, and it's also left an imprint from the texture of that paper towel. And I do that often. I like, again, this is a background layer, but every time I do a layer, I'm trying to give a little bit of interest to the texture. And quite often one will go over top of another, over another, and eventually you have layers and layers of texture, which are impossible to paint in the end game. You've got to do it one at a time in different layers. I've got quinacridone Nicolazo Gold, a high flow acrylic as well, but it's not pasty like a white tub of paint would be. It's fairly fluid and semi-transparent, but as you can see, if I don't spread it around too much, and I had sprayed water on that page as well, and wherever I sprayed the water, it's going quite bright like an Indian yellow, and as I put that over top of the blue, it's becoming green, and I like that. I like how that Nicolazo Gold, which is one of my favorites, it all depends on how much water you add, how thick you will add it. You can get several shades of color from the one container. Now I've got the red iron oxide, which is similar color but much deeper with a little more red in it. And I accidentally stuck the paintbrush way too deep into the bottle. So I've got it all over the handle of the brush, but that's okay. I'm trying not to waste it, and I'm trying to spread it around. I love this color as well. It's a great complement. All these colors work so well together. And now I'm using my favorite paintbrush, my finger, to dab it around. And I'm purposely leaving it thick and dense in some areas and spreading it around thinner in others. And then another dry paper towel, and I'm pressing fairly firmly. You can see it's lifting paint off, and it's leaving fabulous texture and interest on the page there. There's a close-up. I'll do that many, many times, and they'll just, and I decided I'll take that tape off, and I don't like how it was sticking to this particular watercolor paper, so I may have to come up with a different tape to use the next time. Anyway, I want to show you close up all the textures from that paper towel. And that's a lot of fun. This is dry at this point. Now I'm going to use right out of the tub a full strength, heavier paste white paint. And what I'm doing is I'm not only adding white to the spread, but I'm also masking. So wherever I'm putting white, I've got the opportunity, once it's dry, to add more glazing over top of that white and turn it into colors. So the whole idea is to get rid of a little bit of the busyness in that background and give it a blanket of white in some areas, and I'm just being selective and smudging it around. Also, what I want to do and you can only do it with thick paint. You get a toothpick out and you scratch into it. And what I do is, I do this often on my abstracts. I pretend I'm writing something down. This is just a script, which is just a bunch of scribble. There's no wording in there. I quite often say words and phrases as I'm doing it, and it's for intent, but none of it makes any sense. So it's just scribble writing. I'm continuing with masking with the white. At this point, that could have been, I could turn this into an abstract landscape. That could be the sun, the sky, and some earth. But if you look at my inspiration, which I'm holding up again to show you, I want to sort of get that feel again with layers and then a lot of depth of black in the main part of the image, where some of the colors and details disappear into that black, like into canyons. So that's my inspiration. I'm going to try to stay with that plan, even though I could have, like I say, I could have taken this in the direction of an abstract landscape, but then I'm just playing it safe. And the whole point of these books, again, it's just paper, but the whole point of these books is to learn and grow and explore. And you can't do that if you don't be brave and try new things. So sometimes you just have to boldly paint over things, even if you liked it, and see where you go from there. And that's how I got to where I am today, is spending years trying things like that. I'm pressing down with that white, and it's lifted a lot of it, and again made more texture. So I've got white with texture there now, on top of the red with texture, on top of yellow with texture, and it's one layer after another that's just going to build a very interesting background. And again, I may or may not leave that white. It's okay as it is, but it's quite busy, and part of what I did that for, again, is just to do masking, so I can eliminate and make subtle some of that busy background. And then when I paint over all that white, it'll be a softer area for the eye to land on. So I'm going to do the same thing over here on the left, because I like what that was doing. I thought I'd show you that you can spread things around with a roller, but I didn't like what it was doing on this page. And it's also way too solid white. The whole point was not to put solid white there. It was just to put white down. And then what I'll do is, like I did on the other side, spray it with water while it's still wet, and then press down gently, but still fairly firmly, press down with paper towel and leave an imprint and remove some of that white. So I'm just delicately pressing, and I like some of that texture of the white. It's given another texture, but again, once I paint over that, it doesn't have to be that busy. I love playing with layers. I like playing with texture. I like playing with busy versus calm. And in all my abstracts, even if I've got some very busy areas, I think it's really wise to have a calm place for your eye to land on as it's roaming around the page. I don't personally enjoy abstracts that are busy, busy, busy all the way around the entire spread. And I kind of like to coax the eye to take a journey and travel around the page. And having some soft places to land isn't a bad idea. At least that's my trick. So I'm dabbing away some of the areas. Again, I will paint over that. I've got two areas there that I circled that are very clearly two focal points, but I don't want that to be the focal point. I want the focal point eventually, like my inspiration page, to have a lot of black canyon, if you will, area. And these are all details that are going to be floating in the surface, and some of it will disappear into that canyon. So anyway, I had to put the white in order to remove some of the background, get rid of some of the busyness, and once that's fully dry, I can re-glaze over it. So I'm going to go to the top corner. Because I added yellow over blue, it became green, and it's very similar to this green I have. It's called yellow green from High Flow Acrylic, and I'm going to dab a little of that down. But first, I'll spray water, and by spraying water, it's automatically going to come out and hit the water and become quite bright. But that's okay. I'm going to dab that around with my favorite paintbrush, and we'll see where things go. I may not leave a lot of this green, but we'll see. Now I don't want all the green in that top right corner and not have balance. I do like to teach you balance and depths of color and values of color and contrast in my paintings. And so what I want to do is a smidgen of that green on the left side, just to balance. Now normally I do things in threes, but so far I felt like that was enough. I ended up dabbing, because it was still so wet, some of that green touched the blue and became a little bit too muted with green, so I wiped some of that back with some water. So this is very busy. What I'm doing now is I'm trying to soften and make fuzzy and kind of foggy some of the left there with this blue that I had in a container. It's the same blue, but it's mixed with white previously and a little bit of airbrush medium to keep it soft. And so I'm dabbing that around and make it cloudy. And I'm not sure if I'll keep it on the right, but I wanted to balance some of the blue over to the right part of the spread. Same idea as what I did with the green from right to left. And in a third location, I'm just putting a couple of specks. So this is still very, very busy, but my intention is to glaze over a lot of that white. And glazing is when you have transparent fluid paints or inks that you can wipe over, and it's transparent and it leaves a glaze, and then I could wipe some of that away. Wherever it's hit a lot of the white that was wet still, it went quite bright. Now I should have used a cleaner towel up top, and it ended up going over top of some of that blue and it turned more green, but that's all right. So I've got more green. None of these accidents are a mistake for me. They're all happy, you know, quite often they're happy accidents, and I go with them. So I'm just having fun at this point. Keep in mind, this is still a middle stage. I do many layers, and these middle stages are very busy, sometimes a bit confusing, sometimes there's no focus yet, but every time I do a layer and wipe back or reveal or sand or do whatever, every single time I work on a layer, more and more comes to me. Eventually I start to see what the painting wants to be. I'm just bringing out a little bit more of that Nicolazo gold, which I love, and I just love the intensity of it. And now I'll bring out more of that red iron oxide because it's even deeper, and oh, just so vibrant. Just love it. Spreading that around fairly thick because I want to keep that dark color. And the whole time I do these things, I'm trying to think about balance of left and right, but nothing's finalized yet. So even if I find later that I didn't do a very good balance, I've got lots of time to fix that. Since I love this color so much, I'm putting more of it down. And then I'll lift back with some paper towel. Again, it looks like you might think that's a waste of paint, but if you don't put down, and every time I do these layers, by the way, there are more grooves as it dries and layers on the surface of the paper. And those are areas later on that paint can go into those grooves. And then when I wipe off like you see me do, I'm wiping the surface, but the grooves still hold some of those layers of paint. So this is quite fun. It's taking a new direction. I no longer think of it as an abstract landscape. I'm not too sure what it is yet, but I do still want to stick with my plan, which is to eventually have a lot of black canyon thing happening in the middle of the spread. But that's much later. Right now, because I do that last, when I do that, I don't put paint over top of it. So I know that I'm going to get there, but I need to do all these other layers of color first. Now, before I work on any black in the middle, I want to bring out some intensity of that blue with full strength from the bottle. It's still classified as a semi-transparent. So full strength, if I didn't spread it around, it'd be fairly opaque. But you can see as soon as I start to spread it around, it still reveals some of the background because it is semi-transparent. I'm using a very soft brush, and I'm only dabbing at it. I'm not doing paint strokes. I'm just dabbing, just like I would with my finger, and then smudging it. I do a lot of smudging on this piece of work, and even more smudging now with the paper towel. So now I've really brought out some intensity of the blue, which helps to balance with the intensity of that iron oxide red. So now I'm going to start revealing a little bit of the black background, but I'm going to do it subtle. I'm not going to use full strength black. I've watered it down with water and I'm testing it on a piece of paper, and it's very, very semi-transparent and quite light, and it's just giving me a start as to where I want to bring out this black canyon. And as I do this, you can see, I hope you can see, that the more I add this black, the more it makes the colored areas pop to the foreground. I just love playing with this depth. Now, what I'm working on now, the area I'm doing now, and I will zoom in, it's starting to reveal more of the texture and detail from that background, and it's bringing it forward and shooting the black backwards. And I'm doing that just to see what interesting shapes come out of it. But it's twofold. In one way, it's doing that, and in another way, it's just adding more busyness to the page. But not to worry. I need to bring out these shapes first, and then later I can push them into the background one layer by smudging over it a little bit. So one step at a time. You have to be patient and do it one step at a time. This is the part of my process that I really enjoy, and I find it's the most mindful, meditative, because I've kind of got an idea of where this painting is going now, and I'm just taking the time. By the way, I sped this up twice as fast as it was, just so that I wouldn't bore you with too much length of video. So anyway, I'm just going around. Again, this is a wash, a black wash, and it will dry even lighter. But it's given me an idea of how this canyon, if you will, is going to start to take shape. This area here on this orange area with those shapes, those wedges there, that's just going to keep popping forward very dramatically. And then you can see that the canyon, the black, is floating. This detail's floating over top of the canyon. And the bottom area, I decided to smudge it a little. I want it to not sit completely flat on the top of the black. I want it to look like there's 3D depth. So by smudging the bottom there, and pretty soon I'm going to smudge those top two right ones a little bit on the side so that it looks like it's starting to get rounded and disappear into the canyon. I'm just bringing out a few more shapes, and as I do that on the left, I smudged it with my finger. So already I'm trying to make it smudgy, whereas that other area on the right is very clear and crisp. Again, just trying to show variety. If I don't like that later, I can take a paper towel with some rubbing alcohol and wipe a lot of that back. But so far, I'm enjoying it. So really what I'm doing, it might be driving you crazy, but I'm just playing around with opportunities and seeing where things go. Now I'm starting to apply stronger black, and I am starting to really reveal that canyon. But this is still the paler, watered down. This is still the wash, the black wash, because I don't want it to be too bold. I'm going to turn around and reveal more of the circle swooshes, because I need to balance left to right, and I knew full well when I put that down that I was going to reveal some of that as a last stage over top of that blue. See, if I put this down and then put colors over, I lose it and it was a waste. So I do my blacks quite a bit later. I like that, but it needs a little more weight on the left to balance all the heavy black on the right side of the spread. I didn't like that, so I wiped that back. Now I've got full strength black because I'm liking what's happening there, but I want it to be very bold on the left and a very big swatch of black just where that ended there, and that helps draw the eye all across the spread instead of only looking at the black on the right. So that balances with the other area. And now that I've got full strength black, I decided I'm going to go over some of that busy area, but don't worry, I'm going to reveal some of it. What I'm doing is I'm throwing that detail that I revealed, I'm throwing it back a layer. If you were to look up close, you would still see some of that detail, but again, it's receded in the background a bit. And by using my finger and smudging around, helps to reveal some of that detail, but keep it pushed back a layer. And I decided I need some more emphasis on the black canyon over on the left side of the page, just a bit. And while I still had a bit of paint on the brush, I was just spreading that around a bit in a fuzzy, smoky kind of way. I'm enjoying what's happening now. This is doing what I imagine. Even though my inspiration page is completely different, it has similar technique. So now I've got a crisp and clear area, and then I've got these other areas that are very soft and fuzzy and shady. I like that juxtaposition of fuzzy and shady and smudgy versus crisp and clear. Now I thought I've got the opportunity to bring out a little more shape, and I'm just doing that and deciding, do I want to keep it or not? And I'm just deciding I'm going to shoot it to the background after all. But again, so this is where I've added a little more shading on the right, and that makes it much more 3D and makes it look like that's starting to disappear into that back canyon. I'm taking a paper towel. I'm going to spread it on a clean section with rubbing alcohol, and I decided I want to reveal those 2 orange circles. I think that's fun, and I love, and it's also revealing a little more of the white. I really think that that helped bring that forward more, and now I'm doing similar on the left, so I bring more of the white forward. And I love revealing circles and shapes like that. So again, if you don't do all these layers, there's nothing to reveal when you do a technique like that. So be brave, learn to do layers. I want a little more of that. I think that's the quinacridone iron oxide red that I'm putting up there. I like that shape, and I wanted to bring the eye up there so that it goes from the bottom left shapes, follows up to the middle, and the eye goes up to the top right. And then I thought I'm just going to, with all that background area that I shoved into the back, all those little detail spots, I'm going to put a coating of that iron oxide red over top as well, so that it ties it together, and accent a couple of those circles there as well. So now it ties it in. It's got a busyness in the background, but it ties it in. And it helps the eye move around the page with that red. I did those toothpick scratches in a heavier paste white to make grooves, and now I'm putting blue down and then forcing it, rubbing very firmly, so that forces the blue to go into the cracks. And then if I dab away the top surface, that removes some of the blue on the surface, but all that blue that I pushed into the scratches stays in the scratches. So it gives a bit of a detail, which is a little more effective than if I would have taken a pen and just drawn those scribbles. It wouldn't look the same at all. I like that that's a layer that got revealed. I want to put a little bit more blue up there to balance. I just felt like the top left need a little bit more weight of blue. And I'm just patting it. Tried doing the swipe effect, and I thought, no, I just want to dab that back. I'm not trying to make it look like a sky. It's just worked out that way. It looks like a sky with clouds, and that's okay. It can be whatever. I mean, I do abstracts. I like my viewer to see whatever it is they see. Again, I ended up lifting a lot of that, but some of it stayed down in the crevices, and that's fun. This is very, very bold, lots of strong, strong colors. I wanted something bold like this for the opening of my book. I want to open this book and go, whoa, wow, and it's working. It's very, 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 very bold, but soft and playful as well. Now I have a swath of that pale blue on the bottom right, that right there, and I left that there because I knew it didn't match anything else, but I thought if I don't put it there, I won't have it to work with. So I've covered a lot of that up with my iron red oxide, but kept just a hint of that blue down there just to balance the spread. And I'm adding a little more of that red on the left. I'm giving this a really good blow dry. I've sped that up. And I'm pretty much happy. It was bone dry, and now I'm adding my signature. And I'm almost ready to go. I'm calling this done, except that I don't like how messy the left frame of that book looks. On the right, you can see the back frame of the cover nice and clean, and this one isn't. So I'm taking that wash of black, which wasn't 100% black, it's a wash, and I've got a brush, and I sped this up. I'm not that fast. I'm actually cleaning it up by painting over all that smudgy paint that got on the cover, and look what it's doing. It's as if I took this and put it in a frame. It's just livened up the page 100%. I'm just crazy about how good that looks now that I did that. That's wonderful. And even upside down, you can see that there's a balance on the spread. I'm just folding the page back a bit and ready to call it a day. I like that. I like it a lot. I want to show you close up some of the areas of interest. You can see all that texture and grooves in the paint. A lot of fun. Again, can't get that without doing layers. I like the intensity of this. Thanks for joining me. See you soon.